Rick Barry is without a doubt one of the best players of all time. He could shoot the lights out, but he could slash to the rim and finish amongst the trees. He could play the point forward and run your offense, something unheard of at the time. His high IQ combined with great athletic ability made him a complete player, and by year 2 in the NBA, he was a superstar, leading the league in scoring and guiding the Warriors to the finals. But the owner didn't want to honor the incentives in his contract, so Rick decided to bolt for the brand new ABA, becoming the first superstar to do so. But Rick still had an option year on his contract, and he was ordered to sit out the season, joining the radio broadcast for the Oakland Oaks, a team literally in the same market as the Warriors. Rick's move gave the new league legitimacy, as numerous stars would follow in his footsteps. He won a title in his first season with the Oaks, although he missed most of it with torn ligaments in his knee. Injuries would affect him for most of his time in the ABA, as he only played more than 60 games once. He stayed with the Oaks as they moved from Washington, D.C. to Virginia. From here, he was traded to New York, where he made another finals appearance in 1972. However, this is where it ended, as Rick lost his court case, with the judge ordering him to honor the final 3 years of his contract with Golden State. So back to the NBA he went. Although he was only in the league for 4 years, Rick's decision to even join the ABA was the jolt that the league needed to be able to exist as the most successful competitor to the NBA we've ever seen. Welcome to PZ Hoops, and this is another episode of ABA Tales. The year was 1967, and Rick Barry had just averaged 36 points a game in the second NBA season, leading the Warriors to the finals. But in the offseason, Warriors owner Frank Maioli refused to pay the incentives in Rick's contract, so he decided to leave for the brand new ABA.
The proposal that Oakland has offered to me is something that I feel is best for my wife and my family as far as our security is concerned, and this is the reason why I've decided to go over. And it was the most difficult decision I've ever had to make in my life, because Frank Maioli and everybody with the Warriors has just been tremendous to me, and it was extremely difficult, and this is really an understatement when I say that. It was very difficult for me to make this final decision.
This situation was tailor-made for him, as the Oakland Oaks hired his former college coach and father-in-law Bruce Hale to be the head man. Rick's contract with the Oaks saw him make $75,000 a year, plus 15% ownership and 5% of gate receipts, over $600,000. When he was asked about the deal, he said, "I know what a lot of people think of me. They call me a traitor. Is that fair? If they would just look at it the same way they do their own businesses. This is the way I support my family. Why should I be called unloyal? They changed their jobs and nobody says they're unloyal. If everything was based on loyalty, no one would ever make any money." But Rick couldn't play right away, as he still had a 1-year option on his contract with the Warriors. The courts ordered him to sit out in 1967, as he violated the reserve clause on his contract. Rick would in turn become the first athlete to file a court case against a major league, preceding the MLB's Curt Flood by 2 years. However, the media at the time called him selfish and money hungry. But he wasn't alone in how he felt. The Oaks finished 22-56, while Rick spent the entire season in the broadcast booth. Once Rick was able to play, he joined an Oaks team featuring players like Warren Jabali, Doug Moe, and Larry Brown. Rick picked up right where he left off in the NBA, dropping 36 points, 9 rebounds, and 8 assists in his ABA debut. The next game, he dropped 46 points, 14 rebounds, and 4 assists. In his first 30 games, he was dominating, but on December 27th against the Nets, he collided with Ken Wilburn on a drive to the basket, tearing several ligaments in his left knee. He tried to come back at the end of January, but the pain was too severe, and he was out for the rest of the season. Even though he only played in 35 games, he was still named an All-Star and an All-ABA first-team member, averaging 34 points, 9.5 rebounds, and 4 assists. The Oaks finished 16-18, but they looked doomed without Rick. However, Gary Brads and Warren Jabali came out of nowhere. Warren, who was a rookie, led them through the playoffs, beating the Pacers in the ABA Finals as he won the playoff MVP. The Oaks had just become the first West Coast team ever to win a title, but they were running out of money. Rick's absence didn't help, and they were also the only ABA team that shared a market with an NBA team. After averaging less than 3,000 fans a game, owner Pat Boone had lost over $2 million in 2 years, so he sold the team to Earl Foreman, a real estate attorney who formerly owned the Baltimore Bullets. The Oaks were moved to the nation's capital, now being called the Washington Caps. Rick was initially reluctant to leave the West Coast, saying, "If I wanted to go to Washington, I'd just run for president." Despite their location, the Caps were still in the Western Division, so their travel schedule was insane. Rick was still dealing with lingering knee problems, so he wouldn't get into a real rhythm until February, averaging 29 points and 7 rebounds on 51% shooting. He was even better in March, dropping 55 points and 11 rebounds on the first against Denver. He would drop at least 45 5 more times this month. In his first semi-healthy season in the ABA, he was second in scoring and 8th in field goal percentage. He also had 13 double-doubles and dished at least 5 assists in 6 games. Warren missed half the season with injuries, but Rick was the engine that powered their high-octane offense as they finished 44-40. Rick averaged 28 points, 7 rebounds, and 3.5 assists as Washington faced Spencer Haywood and the Denver Rockets in the semifinals. Rick was unconscious in this series, averaging 40 points and 10 rebounds, including a then NBA playoff record 52 points in Game 7, but Washington was blown out to be eliminated. The Caps relocated yet again, this time to Virginia. After already being annoyed with playing on the East Coast, this move was the last straw for Rick. My son Scooter is supposed to go to nursery school this year. I hate to think of the complications that'll cause in Virginia. I don't want him to go down there to school and learn to speak with a southern accent. He'll come home from school saying, "Hi y'all, Dad." I sure don't want that. I've been to Virginia once before, to a basketball tournament in Portsmouth. It seemed alright, but then I knew I'd be leaving right away. That gives you some idea how I feel about the place. I could say a lot worse things, but I won't. I would have never considered going to the ABA if I thought I would have to leave this area. While these comments angered a lot of people, Foreman was having financial issues, so we traded Rick to the New York Nets for a first rounder and cash. The Nets had a solid group of guys outside of Rick, with Bill Melchione, Laverne Tart, Manny Leaks, and Billy Paultz. But Rick's body continued to fail him, as he missed the first month with an ankle injury. When he came back, he was still dominant, averaging 30 in January, 30 in February, and 34 in March, dropping 51 points and 9 rebounds in the second to last game of the season. His injuries prevented him from attacking the glass like he used to, but he was showing a rare ability to run the offense, dishing at least 5 assists in 13 games. He was second in scoring and free throw percentage, 12th in field goal percentage, and 13th in assists. He was finally surrounded by a great supporting cast, as 5 other players averaged at least 13 points a game, but their slow pace helped them allow the second fewest points. However, they still finished with a losing record, but 40 and 44 was still enough for the playoffs, as Rick averaged 29 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists. As fate would have it, the Nets faced the Squires in the semifinals. Rick played his usual brand of ball through the first 4 games, as the series was tied. In Game 5, he dropped 36 points and 7 rebounds, draining 8 3-pointers, but the Nets still lost. He had 45 points, 17 rebounds, and 6 assists in Game 6, but the Nets lost this one as well to be eliminated. The Nets added Trooper Washington and John Roche in 1971, and for the first time in his ABA career, Rick was fully healthy. He put up 44 and 15 in the 4th game of the year, followed by 51, 7 and 7 against the Cougars, and 50, 13 and 7 against the Stars. Rick had 16 double-doubles in 18 games with at least 5 assists. He led the league in minutes by ranking 3rd in free throw percentage and 13th in total assists. Bill had a career season, leading the league in assists yet again, but New York didn't improve that much, finishing 44 and 40. Rick averaged 32 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 4 assists as the Nets faced the Colonels in the semifinals. Rick started this series with a bang, dropping 50 in Game 1, followed by 35 and 39 in the next 2. New York won the series in 5, facing Dr. J and the Squires in the division finals. In Games 4 through 6, he averaged 37 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 assists, all while shooting 55% from the field and 50% from 3. The Nets won a tight Game 7 on the road to clinch the ABA Finals, playing the Pacers, as Rick finally had a chance to play in the championship series. All of the games except the first one were relatively close, but Indiana was the better team, winning in 6. But Rick's time in the ABA would be over after this, as he would lose his court case, with a judge ordering him to honor the last 3 years of his contract with Golden State. The Warriors owner said this upon his return: "I know there are a lot of people around who think Rick's some cavalier. He made a mistake at 23, and he made it out in front of God and everyone, not in private like everyone else makes theirs. He's been paying and paying and paying for it. He's been a very unhappy man." Rick also had this to say about the ABA: "I don't know what I would have expected, but I was very disappointed when I went over to the ABA. I really found myself in the bushes. Everything was disorganized from the top level on down. I'm a terrible businessman, so I know one when I see one. I traveled around and met a lot of owners and team officers and found that they were worse than little kids. In some of the cities, the franchises didn't even have buildings in which to play, and in others, the buildings were beyond belief. They played before small gatherings of family friends. There was a lot of talk about spending big money to buy ball players from the NBA and outbid them for the cream of the college crop. But when it came to putting the figures on paper, they used invisible ink. They had a lot of players that shouldn't have been in pro ball. They had starters who might have been bench warmers in the NBA. It was obvious they couldn't round up talent equal to the NBA's in a year or 2 or 3, but they hadn't rounded up as much talent as I'd expected. I think they only had 2 men who would have been stars in the NBA, Connie Hawkins and Roger Brown, and a few others who would have been important regulars on the good NBA teams. Mel Daniels for one, Jimmy Jones for another. There may have been several others: Doug Moe, Larry Jones, Willie Wise, Donnie Freeman, Ira Harge, and Cincy Powell were good players. Charlie Williams, Louis Dampier, Laverne Tart, and Darryl Carrier were too. And there were others, but some of the best of these weren't big enough for their positions to make it big in the NBA. and some had flopped trials in the old league. Regardless of how you feel about his personality, Rick was one of the best players to ever touch a court. If it wasn't for him, the ABA might have never gotten off the ground, as his arrival was a catalyst for several other stars joining the league. However, his tenure was marred by several injuries, and he had to change his style of play once his athleticism went down. He only played 4 years in the ABA, but that was enough to help establish it as a legitimate competitor to the NBA for a short time. Man, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate y'all. I feel like nobody talks about Rick Barry in the ABA for some reason, because he was elite, even though he was injured most of the time. It was a lot of wild stories, because you know, Rick is a very opinionated person. He says what's on his mind. Maybe that might have rubbed some people the wrong way, but you can't deny his talent on the court. He was one of the first to really practice player autonomy, because the players didn't really have any rights back then, because if you didn't want to play for a team, you had to hold out. Shout out to Rick, man. Rick is still a legend. Definitely helped the ABA become a legitimate league for the short time it was a league, so you can't really take that away from him. You might not like him, but you gotta respect his game. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate y'all. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Turn my post notifications on if you haven't already. Thank you. Please be safe. Stay on the grind. I'm out. Peace.